You've never seen a takedown like this. When Jessica Tarlov butted heads with Candace Owens over one sensitive subject, we witnessed fireworks on television we seldom get to see. The question was simple. Do women supporting or working for Donald Trump get to be included in the feminist conversation? There's so much I need to tell you about as it regards this idea, but subscribe to the channel and watch this clip before we dive in.
I think we can all agree that things have gotten ugly. It has become so hateful. It's become so divisive. Candace, is there a double standard with women on the right, you think?
Of course, there's a double standard. I mean, it's incomprehensible and indefensible, and anybody with a modicum of decency will admit that what's going on here is wrong. I can't even fathom a world where Obama's daughters are threatened with pedophilia by somebody in Hollywood in the same week that someone in his administration is kicked out of a restaurant with 7 members of their family just for wanting to eat. We would never hear the end of the claims of racism. This would not be allowed whatsoever, and it should not be allowed just because this is Donald Trump's administration.
Jessica, your response?
My response is that there are 2 issues at play here. There's the civility issue, which is what happened here with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and I personally don't think that she should have been thrown out of the restaurant. I think you can have a conversation with someone about the beliefs and what this administration is doing without denying them service. We don't deny service to people for immutable characteristics. We can legally on the basis of political affiliation, but I don't think it was constructive and it hurts the debate. The other side to the issue is the fact that Republican women want to be deemed feminists, and they want to have the same kind of clout as women on the left who are actually advocating for policies that help women, whereas the policies out of this administration actually hurt them.
That kind of answers the question, doesn't it? The mere fact that Jessica Tarlov starts out the premise of making out one administration as anti-women for its policies means it's shutting out the feminist conversation to just one interpretation of it. And what's sad is that it's blinding her to the very real dangers that conservative women have faced from a certain progressive strand of feminism for daring to offer a different brand for it, or even just being associated with the broader government policies as what happened with 2 unfortunate incidents against women serving for the Trump administration. First, it was then White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders who was forced to leave the Redhead restaurant in Virginia because the owner saw her as the face of Donald Trump's border and immigration policies. Now, while it's not new that politicians in public can feel criticism or heckling from their critics, there was something more sinister this time. It seemed like a coordinated plan against Republican politicians in public driven by some of the top names in the Democratic caucus to supposedly pressurize them over family separations at the border. For example, Representative Maxine Waters even said, and I quote, "If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out, you create a crowd, and you push back on them, and you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere." And I do not condone this. In light of a statement like this, it's truly something to see Jessica Tarlov not even offer a word of condemnation against this, even when it strikes at the knee of how a civilized and functioning democracy should sort out its differences or grievances. And unsurprisingly, that led to much more incidents where a group of fervent Democrats would gather around and shout down Republican politicians, even if they were just trying to enjoy a meal with their family at a restaurant. Here's what happened to then Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, which was part of a broader feeling of fear that had gripped Republican politicians in public.
How dare you spend your evening here eating dinner as you're complicit in the separation and deportation of over 10,000 children separated from their parents? How can you enjoy a Mexican dinner as you're deporting and imprisoning tens of thousands of people who come here seeking asylum in the United States? We call on you to end family separation and abolish ICE!
Abolish ICE! Abolish ICE! Abolish ICE!
Abolish ICE!
Shame! Family separation! And family separation! You don't eat in peace! If kids don't eat in peace, you don't eat in peace! If kids don't eat in peace, you don't eat in peace! If kids don't eat in peace, you don't eat in peace! Not in D.C., not in the U.S., not in D.C., not
While protesting something is absolutely a public right, perhaps there's some weight to it when Candace asks what would happen if the roles were reversed. None of this attempt to harass someone in public should be accepted or condoned from either side, and yet there were more than enough instances of not just political opponents being heckled, but also conservative women being shut out of the feminist conversation at large. Not just that, the entire debate around the border policies that resulted in family separations was co-opted by strands of feminism as its own issue, basically using the issue to score points. instead of actually trying to solve it.
Please, I hate this selective feminism that we hear on the left all the time, okay? Well, don't make this a feminism issue because it's not a feminism issue.
But it is,
when you're going out and attacking women, you're not, I'm not done, okay? When you're going out and attacking women, you are not a feminist. This is not defensible whatsoever. And you sit here and you say that it's because you care about mothers. The basis of this is that people are upset that illegal immigrants are being separated from their mothers. Why don't you refocus some of that energy to the black community? They've been having their families separated. In fact, it's subsidized in the black community. You appreciate single motherhood. You are giving more money to families for fatherless absence. So all of this selective fake outrage when you guys do not have the same defenses for the black community is really lost on me. And it's time's up on this altogether. I think the black community has had enough of you guys being selectively outraged for parents of illegal immigrants, but not for the parents of the black community who have been separated from their family for about 6 decades.
All right,
now.
And ladies, I just want to point out, ladies, I just want to point out, let's keep this civil. As I opened up this segment, there is already so much hate, indecency in this country. So let's just keep this debate a debate and keep it civil. Jessica, your response.
I believe I was keeping it civil, and then Candace told me that I wasn't a feminist. I also believe that Candace doesn't speak for the entire.
You weren't. I said the left.
Okay, ladies, Jessica.
I said the left. I didn't say you, Jessica. So don't make it personal. I said the left. It's selective feminism on the left that we're seeing.
I disagree with you, and I'm going to do that politely. I'm going to return to my original argument, which is that we have heard this for years, that Kellyanne Conway, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and all the women who work for this president and support his agenda aren't getting their due. They're not getting their due from the feminist community because they are advocating for policies that hurt women, that keep them in a bad economic position, that don't allow them to live equally in this society.
And that perfectly encapsulates what's wrong with both Jessica Tarlov and the modern left's interpretation of feminism. Instead of making it an open platform for women to empower themselves, it has tightly woven itself into politically partisan agendas. It's made things like abortion, economic redistribution, and a patriarchal reading of history as the starting point for the feminist conversation, effectively shutting out the conservative women that may advocate for something different for women. It's not possible to doubt or denigrate them just for the different conception, because that's only going to lead to the kind of public tensions that we see everywhere in politics, including the 2 examples of heckling that you just saw.
Can I ask you this, Jessica?
Yes. Same for the black women. Same for black women in this
Do you
society.
think that Kirstjen Nielsen should be harassed because of her position and because what is going on with immigration? Do you think because of that she deserves to be treated the way that she does? She was essentially forced out of a Mexican restaurant, protesters in there. You may disagree with her, but do you think the way she's been treated is fair?
I think that what Kirstjen Nielsen did in initially coming out and lying about what this president's policy did, then having to backtrack on it,
that wasn't
my
question, though, Jessica. That wasn't my question, though.
I think that people should have civil conversations about it and certainly have every right as a public official to come up to her table and to call her out on her lies and this administration's lies. If she wants to leave because of it, that's on her.
Right.
But she should be open to that dialogue with the American public who is dissatisfied.
Candace, very quickly,
this is a very slippery slope. The left should stop this, because then you're basically saying that in the future this is going to be allowed in administrations that you do support. And as I said, the selective outrage for illegal families, when this has been going on in the black community, no one talks about the fathers that are separated, the fathers that are behind bars, the fathers that are buried on the south side of Chicago and in Baltimore. So again, this is completely, to me, seems like fake outrage, and I don't support it whatsoever.
That's a dangerous, slippery slope that's only going to end badly. Politicians have a life outside of their office, just like the rest of us. And using their public presence to shout down and embarrass them sets a terrible precedent that is not just going to stop at one end of the political spectrum. Whether it be something like the border crisis or feminism, the precondition for a democratic system to assume that your political opponents are not operating from a place of malice or evil, but simply a difference of policy opinion. Doing that makes you see conservative or Republican feminists not as an oxymoron, but as a different interpretation of what women's right in the country should look like. Perhaps Candace Owens herself is an example of that, transcending her race and gender-based identity politics, while also stepping aside from the typical third-wave interpretation of feminism we see today. Let me know in the comments if you agree, because I think this conversation was a really interesting window into how 2 different strands of a social movement should know that they have more in common with each other than they realize.